Okay, so our last bit of straight line graphs is we're able to work out perpendicular lines. Okay, now perpendicular lines are quite tricky, but they like putting them in, so we do need to look at them and we need to make sure that we're happy with them. Okay, so what does perpendicular mean? Hopefully we might know that already, but don't worry if you don't. Perpendicular means that they are at right angles to each other. Okay. So I've drawn a little sketch here for you to see. These two lines are perpendicular because here's one line and here's the other line, and they are at right angles to each other. Okay, that makes them perpendicular. Alright, now I've written the equations of these lines. I've written this one to be y equals 2x and this one to be y equals minus a half x. What's the gradient of this one? The gradient is 2. What's the gradient of this one? It's minus a half. So, to calculate the perpendicular gradient, it's minus 1 over m. So, if you have the gradient of one line, say the gradient of one line is 3, the perpendicular gradient is minus 1 over 3. Okay? This you could also call taking the negative reciprocal. Okay, so the perpendicular gradient is the negative reciprocal. Recall that the reciprocal is 1 over, so the negative reciprocal is minus 1 over. Okay? Right. It will hopefully make sense when we do it. So, here we have find the equation of the perpendicular line to y equals 4x plus 7 through 16, 5. Okay. So first of all, we're going to look at what the gradient is. So what's the gradient of this line? The gradient is 4. What, therefore, is the perpendicular gradient? Perpendicular gradient. The perpendicular gradient is the negative reciprocal, so it's minus 1 over 4. That is your perpendicular gradient. Okay? Now I'm going to do this both ways. I'm going to do it with y equals mx plus c, and I'm going to do it over here with y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Okay, we're going to do it both ways and see which one you prefer. So, if minus 1 over 4 is our gradient, that means we've got y equals minus a quarter x plus c, or over here I've got y minus y1 equals minus a quarter x minus x1. Okay? Now we have been told that this line has got to go through 16, 5. So this means that this is my x coordinate, this is my y coordinate. Okay, or over in this case, this is my x1, this is my y1. Okay? Right, let's use this side first. So my y is 5, so I've got 5 equals minus a quarter times 16 plus c. Don't forget 16 means 16 over 1, so I've got times the top two, minus 16, 4 times 1 is 4, plus c. Minus 16 divided by 4 is minus 4. How do I get my c? I add 4 to both sides, so my c is 9. Therefore, my equation of my perpendicular line is y equals minus a quarter x plus 9. Okay? Let's now go over and use this one. Once we've got to this point, we've put the m in, we've been given our x1 and our y1, so we've got y minus 5 equals minus a quarter x minus 16. The horrible bit about this is this divided by 4. Okay, so we're going to times everything by 4 to get rid of that. So we get 4y minus 20 equals, we're just left with minus 1 x minus 16. Expand the bracket. Minus 1 times minus 16 is plus 16. So we get 4y minus 20 equals minus x plus 16. And then we can just add the 20. So we get 4y equals minus x plus 36. Now that may not look the same as that. But if we divided everything by 4 here, we would have y equals, that's a 1 in front of the x, so minus 1 over 4x plus 36 divided by 4 is 9. So they give you the same. You could leave it in this form here, that would be fine. You could leave it in this form, that would also be fine. Okay, they're very flexible about how you leave it. Either method is fine. Right, let's go on to the last one. Now this is the humdinger of all questions, okay? This is one that's really going to be quite tricky. Okay, totally within our capability zone. So we've got to find the equation of the perpendicular bisector to AB. What does it mean if we have a perpendicular bisector? Well, if I had a line, AB, I mean obviously our line is going to be diagonal, but let's say we have a perpendicular line AB. The perpendicular bisector goes through AB and it goes through here, which is the midpoint of AB. Okay, so it's perpendicular and it goes through the midpoint. Right, how do we calculate the midpoint? Well, the midpoint obviously is halfway between our two coordinates. So our midpoint of AB is going to be halfway between 6, 9, and which is A, and B, which is 8, 17. Okay? Now, hopefully, it might be obvious how to calculate the midpoint. For example, what's halfway between 6 and 8? Well, it's 7. But if it's not obvious, to calculate the midpoint, you might want to write this down somewhere. You add your 2x coordinates and half it, and you add your 2y coordinates and half it. And that is the coordinates of your midpoint. So here, we've got 6 plus 8 divided by 2, and we've got 9 plus 17 divided by 2. 6 plus 8 is 14, 9 plus 17 is 26, 14 divided by 2 is 7, 26 divided by 2 is 13. So our midpoint is 7, 13. Now you might be able to just look at those coordinates and get it, and that is fine. Okay? So far we've done the midpoint of AB, so we know that that is going to cross that point there, 7, 13. Okay? We've got to calculate the equation that is perpendicular to AB. So first of all, we're going to need to work out the gradient of AB. Now recall that gradient is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? Our coordinate of A is 6, 9. So that's x1, that's y1. And our coordinate of B is 8, 17. That's x2, that's y2. Okay, so we've got 17 take away 9. Divided by 8 take away 6. 17 take away 9 is 8. 8 take away 6 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. That doesn't always happen, but that's fine. Our gradient is 4. I'm saying that because it's the same as the last one. Okay. Then we've got to work out our perpendicular gradient. So you'll be getting marks all the way through this. Our perpendicular gradient, you'll get a mark for stating it, is minus 1 over our original gradient, so it's minus 1 over 4. It's our negative reciprocal, minus 1 over 4. Okay? Then you can use y equals mx plus c, or y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. It does not matter. I'm going to use y equals mx plus c. So we've got y equals minus a quarter x plus c. Now, what point can I use now? Well, I can't use A because it doesn't go through A, and I can't use B because it doesn't go through B. I've got to use the midpoint, okay? That is the whole point of working that out. You've got to use the midpoint. That's X, that's Y. So we've got 13 equals minus a quarter times 7 plus C. 7, obviously, is the same as 7 over 1. Times the top times the bottom, so we've got 13 is minus 7 over 4 plus C. How do I get that onto the other side? I plus it, so I'm plussing 7 over 4. So I've got 13 plus 7 over 4 equals C. 13 is the same as 13 over 1. How do I add fractions? Common denominator. So 13 times 4 is 52. So it's 52 over 4 plus 7 over 4. So that makes 59 over 4. What is my equation of a straight line? Pop it back into this equation here. So it is y equals minus a quarter x plus 59 over 4. If you want to tidy it up and times through by 4 to get rid of the 4 on the bottom, you'd have 4y equals minus x plus 59. That is absolutely fine too. Okay, that is perpendicular lines, the hardest one you'll get.